First of all, thank you for joining us for this video series that we're doing for with Cosmos Hub. Do you want to start with just giving like a quick intro and what you're building?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Vishal. I'm one of the co-founders of Stride. Stride is building liquid staking for app chains. So what that means is you have like your Atom, let's say, and you stake your Atom, you can earn some rewards. When you stake your Atom, it's locked up and you can't use it on Osmosis or in DeFi, you can't take out a loan against it. What Stride does is you can stake your Atom with Stride, and then you earn all the staking yield, but you get a token, ST Atom, and you can go use that in DeFi. Or for example, you can take out a loan against it, you can LP it. If you're ever like, hey, I just want to sell it, you can sell it, and it unlocks liquidity for all of your assets. We support 15 different Cosmos tokens today.
Why do you think LSTs and the staked asset is an important problem to be addressed in the in blockchain and in Cosmos space?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So I feel like there's this trade-off for most chains when they launch, when they want high network security. So they want let's say Ethereum has very high network security. If it had low security, people wouldn't be confident launching applications on it. And so in order to get high security, especially for new chains, they often have to give a lot of staking rewards to stakers. But that trades off with wanting to have applications that use that token. Stake Atom, you can pay stakers to stake and secure the network. And you also want to allow people to use the Atom in DeFi, to LP it, do all sorts of use it for NFTs, whatever. And these kind of trade off. The more you pay for staking rewards, the more secure the chain is, but the harder it is to use in DeFi. With LSTs, you can both stake your tokens and use them on chain.
What are your thoughts about Cosmos's journey, especially in the past 1 or 2 years, and what are some features that you're really excited about, that could really pivot the progress?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like since Cosmos inception, it's always been on the pioneering front of crypto tech. So always you see all these really innovative new features in Cosmos, and then the rest of crypto kind of adopts them a few years later. It's really I feel like the breeding ground for new ideas in Cosmos. And over the last 2 years, I think we've seen a real focus on the UX and the underlying infrastructure for Cosmos chain. So things like cross-chain swaps, things like front ends being much better. The wallet infrastructure has gotten so much better over the last 2 years. I think going forward, we're going to see much higher quality UX for Cosmos assets. I think this has been mostly the biggest drawback of Cosmos today, because you have so many different chains, you have a lot of fragmentation. It's a little bit more complicated for users and hey, where my token's on X chain or Y chain. And I think over the next maybe next year, a ton of features getting rolled out that's going to really improve the UX across the space.
When you did launch Stride, how did you decide on choosing to launch it on Cosmos? What was the thought process? And
it's a great question. So I think two things. One is we were just involved in Cosmos a little bit. So we had assets on Cosmos chains. We're running a small validator in Cosmos. We're just kind of interested in the space. That's what first piqued our interest. And then second, we're thinking a lot about what the end state of crypto looks like 20, 30 years from now, what it's going to look like. And we're really sold in this Cosmos vision of all the applications that are really meaningful and have users will want their own separate chain in order to optimize the chain for themselves. So think of if I'm a DEX, I want to optimize everything on the protocol to make my DEX experience as good as possible. Same in the lending market, same thing with a protocol. We thought Cosmos was the best stack for that and want to be at the forefront of helping make that happen.
We're going to jump into few questions about ICS and building on the hub. So since Stride is an ICS chain, how was your journey and the decision about getting into chain security? And it's because it's one of the the top at least the first few chains that decided to adopt this. So
yeah.
How did you come across making that call?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Stride was the second ICS chain, the first chain to transition from regular chain to ICS chain. So it was it was a big decision. It changed a lot about the way the chain works. For us, it came down to two things. So the first is just security. So Stride's liquid staking protocol. We hold a reasonable amount of TVL. And one thing that's always on users' minds is how secure is the LST. You don't want to use a liquid staking token that might get hacked or might have low security. And as our TVL was starting to increase, it became an issue we heard from users of, hey, how secure is the chain actually? And ICS was the best path to kind of increasing security in the chain. But the second thing is Stride is we want to support the tokens that we offer. So Atom, for example, was our biggest token at the time and is still one of Stride's main tokens. And ICS is a way to kind of drive alignment between Stride and the rest of kind of the Cosmos community. And it's a good way to kind of make that happen.
Since you're an ICS chain, what do you think the hub can do more to incentivize more chains to use interchain security? I think, because it's important for the long-term sustainability of the mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. I think two big pain points that we've heard from ICS. One is There's a long tail of validators that run ICS. So there's 175 validators in the hub, I believe. The long tail at the end, they don't get that much staking rewards from the ICS chains, but they still incur all the costs of running it. And so I think something that allows a certain number of validators to opt out, which I think is actually already live on the hub today, that will really help kind of make it less onerous for people to run ICS chains. And the second is just the onboarding development time. It's still kind of new, I haven't been a ton of ICS chains. And so I think as we get more reps and it's a bit easier, and it can be more almost automated in a way, it'll make the onboarding experience a little bit easier for chains. One more thing I've heard is right now the ICS chains distribute their payments to stakers kind of uniformly. One piece of feedback we've gotten from validators, I think might be a direction we'll see ICS go, is doing something different with the payments. Instead of distributing them to stakers, maybe going to the hub community pool, maybe going to buy back Atom, maybe going directly to validators to help subsidize other type of costs they might run. But I can see more interesting uses for the ICS payments in the future.
Since Stride went from being its own sovereign chain, then to become Interchain Securities secured chain, like a consumer chain or something. How do you think that the operations and the functionalities change a little bit when the transition happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it makes Stride much more mature as a chain, and in terms of the nodes themselves. If you're as a sovereign chain, Stride was relatively young. It's more nimble, more fast, but a little bit less polished around the edges, I would say. We had a really high quality validator set, and they're super responsive, super engaged, and we're amazing kind of running all these sort of fast software upgrades we run in Stride. We did I think 20 software upgrades in the first 18 months of the protocol, and amazing at being able to get all that through. But they're a little bit less institutional, a little bit less productionized, I would say, than the hub validator set, which has been around for quite a number of years, has a ton of experience running all sorts of node operations. Now that Stride's an ICS, I think we're slightly less nimble, but slightly more stable. And that's kind of the trade-off that we get here. That the validators are for example, when we do a software upgrade, a lot of the validators now will check the code, they'll do tests before and after, and that process takes some time. So normally upgrades now will take a week and a half or 2 weeks as opposed to 3 days from before. But then the quality of those upgrades has really gone up quite a bit.
What is one metric that you think, at least you believe, that is a great indicator of the growth of the Cosmos ecosystem?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the number of apps being built, we've seen just a crazy large number of apps being built. And it's not just app chains, we've seen more and more app chains kind of coming into the Cosmos. DYDX is a great example, Slushy, a ton of great chains being built on the Cosmos SDK. But then I think we've also seen a large increase in the number of apps on the actual chains themselves. Look like Neutron, for example. So many new apps launching there. Osmosis has a huge suite of applications now. And we see more and more kind of these novel, interesting DeFi primitives coming to Cosmos.
Vishal, if you can run us through a brief explanation about what Hydro is, and how do you think it can be really pivotal in bringing liquidity fast to projects and onboarding more projects on Cosmos?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hydro, really quick overview, is it's a process to let Atom governance basically rent out liquidity, so Atom liquidity or some other type of liquidity, to projects that want it in a market-driven way. So if there's 10 projects might want Atom liquidity, it allows them to bid for it, and then market can decide okay, allocate 10% to this project, 20% here, and then it can rebalance that on a timely basis. So projects, sometimes they might need more liquidity, sometimes it's less important for them, and so they can choose when they want to bid on it, depending on what their needs are in that moment. In terms of how it's going to help Cosmos liquidity or new projects, by far I think the biggest roadblock for most new projects when they're launching is that they don't have an initial set of capital or something to get the flywheel going. So think of a DEX. When it launches, you need some initial amount of liquidity on the DEX for it to even be useful for users. If you don't have some liquidity, then users can't swap it all, then you'll get fees that allow more users to come in, more LPs to come in. So you want something to kick off the flywheel. This allows projects to kind of rent that initial growth period directly from the hub. You can also imagine there might be periods when projects experience a ton of growth and they want to rent more liquidity to help sustain that growth for a longer period of time. They can then go and rent that from Hydro. Whereas today, it's kind of a bit more challenging. Atom Governance does do lots of POL deals where it does deploys liquidity that it owns to different protocols. But the nature of those deals is more complex today. I think they usually are very multifaceted, last a long period of time. So one example is when Stride onboarded onto ICS, we, as part of that deal, proposed a 450,000 Atom POL deal. And that Atom Governance overwhelmingly voted in favor of it, But structuring such a deal takes a very long amount of time. It's not just financial. There's lots of kind of moving components. For example, Stride's a consumer chain. There's like home marketing we do. There's kind of like lots of ways that this manifests. Hydro, I think, they'll deliver one route that's very simple and very easy to go into, and that's permissionless as well. So lots of projects can go participate, and then it kind of evens the playing field for new entrants.
What do you think, like this is, at least how I understand, is a very express form of governance, special because liquidity needs to be delivered quickly also for these projects to rent it out.
Totally.
Do you think this could be something that can extend more than just towards from bidding liquidity to other models as well in Cosmos? Like right now, the express governance mechanism that Hydro provides, it's for bidding liquidity.
Oh, I see.
But can this be extended to other forms of transactions as well?
Yeah, I think absolutely. So, I mean, it's been I think, very well-known issue in Cosmos. The governance is very minimal today, and it's not very expressive. You put up a single vote, you can only do yes, no, veto. And I think Hydro is one example of, there are other types of governance you might want, like a market-based, like auction kind of, That's something you can't do in the Gov module today. I can imagine as there's more things that people kind of standardize, like for example, Hub has done a lot of liquidity provisioning deals. Hydro is a way to kind of formalize that and make that more long-standing, more kind of production ready, so to speak. You can imagine other types of governance processes the Hub might want to do. It could also go through these kind of more quick, easy or quick to do things. So things maybe like, one example could be like grant funding. Let's say like the Hub wants to give 1 million Atom a year in grant funding. It could be one big grant proposal. People vote on like, I like this one, I like that one, and that's a way to kind of streamline the way to allocate grant funding. You can also imagine like other things that the Hub might want to allocate to. So maybe things like onboarding new ICS chains. You'd be like, hey, there's 10 chains. How should we prioritize which ones we're going to onboard? Lots of these kind of more expressive governance. I think I'm hopeful that we'll see more of that in the coming years. The Gov module hasn't changed since the Hub first went live like 4 years ago or 5 years ago. So I think it's due for a revamp.
Beyond DeFi, what are like other sectors basically that can benefit from Hydro's liquidity bidding mechanism basically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the primary purpose is going to be DeFi because it's where a lot of the use for having these kind of like excess Atom will end up going into. But I could also imagine like social apps or something, or things where you need some float of capital to get things going. It could still be useful for them to bid on some initial liquidity. So maybe you imagine like something like Friendtech, maybe you have some initial amount of Atom that they could use to kind of seed what things are valued at, and then they can give that back once the protocol like hits traction. So I can imagine use cases like that potentially, but I think DeFi will be the main hub.
So we'll jump into like a quick rapid fire section. So Atom as a token, sell or compound?
Compound.
Why should cosmonauts hold Atom?
There's so much on the roadmap and so many new builders coming to the space and all these new things on the ICS roadmap. Best time to hold Atom.
Name one challenge that's facing Cosmos out.
I think bring in more users and liquidity.
ICS, do you think of it as a safety net or as a growth accelerator?
Growth accelerator.
Describe ICS in one word.
Expansion.
Yeah, so your favorite interchain wallet, and there can be multiple.
I like all of them. They're all good. I use different ones for different purposes. Kepler, I think, is the best desktop multi-sig experience, and Leap, I think, is the best mobile experience.
Your thoughts on the need of like better LST assets on Cosmos to bring in liquidity? Like, what do you think is much needed infra-wise and for more projects to come in?
Yeah, definitely. I think we definitely need to, something we have to work on is more liquidity for the LSTs themselves to make them more easily transferable. And I think we also need to work on bringing users in EVM or Solana over to Cosmos. There's been a lot of work done on this so far, but I think we're just scratching the surface.
A proposal, like a governance proposal you remember very vividly on Cosmos?
The onboarding of ICS or the turning on of ICS.
So yeah, you have to choose between two. You receive 1,000 Atom now or receive 100 Atom every month starting today for the next 10 years.
Oh, 100 Atom every month for next 10 years, yeah, easily.
Do you want to give us like a quick catchphrase about building on Atom or where you think it's headed?
Yeah, I think for me it's Cosmos, anything is possible. You can build anything your heart desires in the Cosmos SDK, and I think that's not true for most of crypto. Like you have such a constrained design space for a lot of crypto, but in Cosmos, especially with the Cosmos SDK, you can build like pretty much whatever you want. Like DYX is a great example, a truly very high functioning, performant L1 protocol, fully built on the Cosmos stack, and it would be impossible on any other chain.
Thanks so much.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.